You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, thanks for coming back to the podcast. And we're up to episode number 373 of Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. This week we have as our main guests Jana Giles and David Nelson, or to those who met them on the AT last year, Ducky and Gravy. Fortunately, they explained those names to us. Jana and David became a couple just before they hit the trail, so the fact that the two of them are still a couple after completing a thru-hike of the AT speaks much to the strength of that relationship. Ducky and Gravy will be on in a moment. Then we have three more members of our class of 23. The good news is that each of them, Steve Nota, Joanne Flagg and Dale Shotkoski, are still going strong. It hasn't all been plain sailing. It never is out on the trail, but each in their own way is having a blast. I'm also going to be addressing a housekeeping issue for the episode in 2 weeks' time, when I'll be away at trail days, then hiking for 5 days and unable to include a catch-up with our class of 23 members. I'm looking out for your suggestions for a middle section of the show for that week. Finally, we'll hear about George Stefanos in Then the Hail Came, where George reflects upon some of the now lost parts of the trail in Connecticut. So let's hear how a new couple decided to take their first real date on an Appalachian Trail thru-hike. Here's Jana and David, or Ducky and Gravy. Today we have that, almost inexplicable combination. A couple who decided to hike the Appalachian Trail together. This is Jana Giles and David Nelson. Hey guys, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks. Excited to be here.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, and you guys were actually there when we were all at our Woods Hole weekend last October. There was quite a vibe at the time, wasn't it? Why were so many people out there together?
So that was what we like to call our little Sobo bubble, I guess. And we just happened upon this retreat in the woods where everyone was learning about thru hiking. And we had no idea that was going on. We just sort of showed up and there was this giant hiking convention type thing going on. Yeah.
So what was it like there? How many of you were there? Because it seemed to me there was a huge amount. I mean, that's a northbound type bubble. So had you all been held up by bad weather somewhere or what?
No, I think it was kind of like a mixture of a bunch of little bubbles. And I think that we all had little groups of 2, 3, 4, and then would meet another little group of 2, 3, 4 and end up being a group of 7, 8, 9. And it kept multiplying.
It's pretty cool how that works, isn't it? And before we get into it, the two trail names, pretty unusual. So, David, you go first with why on earth you are Gravy.
So, being Canadian, I really like poutine. And so generally it's made with fries and gravy. But on trail, I decided to mix it up a little bit. And you can't really have French fries on trail. And so I decided to try and do a mashed potatoes and gravy style poutine. But I only had one pot and I had 2 dry mixtures. And so I thought, well, they each require 500 milliliters of water and I have a full liter pot, so I can just do it all in one.
I very quickly
learned. I very quickly learned that I couldn't do it all in one. And the resulting concoction was a gravy consistency with clumps of mashed potatoes and
lovely
non-dissolved gravy mix, and it was just disgusting. And so I was hiking with Ducky and a few others at that time, and they tried to start calling me gravy water, and I kind of drew the line at gravy, and then it just stuck.
And you found that acceptable. Good for you. So, and you've just been referred to as Ducky. By the way, you don't call each other Gravy and Ducky now you're back in real life, do you?
No, sometimes. But on the trail, I feel like I called him Gravy more than I called him David. It really became natural. I guess maybe because that's what everyone else was calling him.
Well, hang on. In that case, we've already talked about this. So what did you think about trail names? Does it Does it impart something different within you, do you think? Or does it bring out something different within you?
Definitely. We were both super excited to get trail names. When we started out, neither of us had them before the trail, and we were like antsy to get one. Like we were suggesting trail names for other people and like waiting for people to suggest them for us and trying not to give each other our trail names. Like we wanted it to come naturally from someone else.
Very purist of you. So why? And please tell me, why Ducky?
So I'm Ducky because I carried into the 100-mile wilderness, so at the start of our trail, a lot of things I didn't need. And among those things I didn't need were a giant pair of rubber yellow rain pants. And it rained a lot when we were in the 100-mile wilderness. And I got soaked. And so I wore those instead of pants for a few days.
And who actually named you? Do you know?
I don't remember. It was probably Shaggy or Lost Boy.
It's funny, actually. I took great pride in. I named 2 people in 2014. I don't remember naming anybody in 2019. Maybe I did. I don't recall. But you feel somewhat almost proprietorial about naming somebody. I feel anyway.
Absolutely. When people kind of kept the name that we gave them, it was like a little sense of pride. Like, oh, cool, they're going to use that.
Yeah. Now you decided to take this on right out of college, I believe. Is that correct?
Yep.
One of you must have been the prime driver behind going. Who actually was it?
Yeah, so it was kind of an interesting way that we ended up. So I ended up having this with another friend of ours, kind of this pipe dream. They one day were like, I'm going to hike the Appalachian Trail. And so I was like, yeah, why not? I'll join you.
Sure.
And that was like a good 3 or 4 years before we graduated. And it kind of just stayed this pipe dream, kind of a goofy idea until about a year and a half before graduation, when we were like, we could actually like plan this out and do it. And at that point, Ducky had some other commitments and wasn't able to do the trail, and just the timing and everything, and the year and a half leading up to the trail, kind of a lot of plans changed for everyone, and Ducky ended up being able to then do the trail. And so I guess I was kind of like solid in it the entire way, but I don't think Ducky ever didn't want to do it. I think it was just situational.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm usually the one with the crazy ideas, I feel. And like, hey, let's go on this 100-kilometer bike ride, or let's, go do this nutsy thing. That's usually my ideas. But this one was Gravy's.
You know what? It's funny, actually. If it's not your idea, if it's not your drive to do it, I wonder how your mindset gets there in the end. I'm sure just doing it probably got it. I know that in 2014, the day before I went, I was just browsing through some books and I saw, and the foreword to this book, it said, "This has got to be the thing you want to do more than anything else this summer." And that for me absolutely summed it up. It was exactly what I wanted to do. So did you get that enthusiasm pretty quickly then? I nearly called you Ducky, Jana.
Hey, either works. It's kind of nice to be called Ducky after so much time.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I kind of have an enthusiasm for any crazy idea. Like if it had been the Appalachian Trail, if it had been sailing across the Atlantic Ocean, whatever it was, like if other people were doing it and it was going to happen, like I wanted to be there. So I don't know that it was so much like a passion like that drove me to do the Appalachian Trail specifically, or just like, hey, this is happening and I want to be a part of that.
Yeah. So you had a plan to do it. You said you wanted to do it. Were you a couple at the time when you first thought about it, David, or not?
No, we weren't. No. So that again, it was just situational and really weird timing. It started out right before we got on trail. We actually decided to start dating. And so it was a strong trial by fire.
Oh my God! Oh, this makes it even more inexplicable. Oh, my interest. So I didn't get that from our previous conversation. So you knew each other before, but you only started dating just before you got on trial. Oh my God! Were you actually planning the trip before you started dating?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Talk me through that one then. No, you know what? Perhaps not. Perhaps not. I don't know how that comes together in its own way. Was it because you both had this common goal you were aiming towards?
Yeah, I mean, I think that of like many things. We've been friends for a really long time, and yeah, you could say that.
Oh, well, yeah, let's leave it at that. and so, were you both hikers before the AT though, in any meaningful way, or was this just a appeal that was more than just hiking? It was backpacking, obviously, but were you actually hikers?
Yeah, I took David out on his first hiking trip. What was it, like a couple of years, I guess, before the Appalachian Trail. Like, I'd been hiking for a while on the weekends and stuff, nothing wild. And David's first hiking trip was maybe 3 years ago. I remember
when you were just friends.
Yeah.
When you were just friends.
Yeah, I remember there being a ripped hammock and a lot of grumpiness. So, you know what? He came a long way.
Was that you or him?
That was him.
Yeah, I got it. I got it.
That was all me, yeah.
So how did the two of you actually prepare? Because it's interesting that your relationship would change just before you went, but how did you actually prepare for the trail physically and gear-wise? What did you do?
Before the trail, we were in our final year of engineering, and I can't speak for David, but for myself, I was pretty busy with school, and honestly, I went running sometimes. I copied the gear that David bought, and other than that, we booked our spot at Katahdin, and
that's the way to do it.
Just started, really. Like, I am not a research person, so I didn't.
Did you do the research, David?
Yeah, I did the majority of the research, but it like only towards gear, to the point where I didn't know. Basically, I knew at the start of the trail we had Katahdin because we were going southbound. So we started on Katahdin, went straight into the 100-mile wilderness, and then had Maine and the Whites. And after the White Mountains, I didn't really know what to expect or what was even really after it. So I went into it with like, okay, I understand gear and I have a good idea of the gear and kind of that research, but nothing really on the trail itself. And it was like, well, I'll figure it out as I go. It's it's kind of, you just keep walking and eventually you see new stuff.
It's a can-do attitude, which I like as well. There are, to be honest with you, I think people often overcomplicate this, and they will, and you obviously heard people talk about gear when you're on trail. It's an endless conversation, I guess. So from your own preparation, lack of it and part of it, would you have any advice for aspiring hikers, maybe those about to set off, in terms of gear and preparation? Or would you just say, just go for it?
Yeah, mine would definitely be like, you cannot read enough or watch enough videos that are gonna tell you what you actually need on the trail. Like, it doesn't really matter what other hikers, carry or love, and like you might end up loving some of the same things, but realistically, you're gonna start and you're gonna realize, you know what, I hate this piece of gear, I want this instead, and you never would have been able to figure that out from an Amazon review or whatever.
Exactly. And David, did either of you change out any of your gear as you went along?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. You read reviews and you think you know what you want and what'll get you going, but as soon as you get on trail, you really start to realize the items you need. And for me, one of my sleeping bag that I started out with was super heavy and started just losing insulation.
Right.
And so that was something I needed to swap out. And there were small things, and it just kind of, by the end of the trail was like, I could completely do this with an entirely different set of equipment if I wanted to, or like I could have done it with the exact same. Like, there was so many options at that point that it's like, you can't let that be a restrictor. You're like, just go out with the gear I have and then see where that takes me and replace it or change it along the way.
That's an engineer talking, though. Yeah, you just change up stuff. It's not a problem. And before you set out, and I've spoken about this to several people who go out with friends or with partners or whatever. Did you have that conversation about what would happen if one of you couldn't or just didn't want to do it? I mean, how did you work your way through that? Because you must have thought about it.
Yeah, I think we kind of both went into the trail assuming one or both of us were absolutely not going to finish. Maybe that was why we didn't plan much, because we just assumed we weren't going to finish, because the numbers of people that finish are so low. So yeah, we did chat about it. I was like very much in the camp of like, it doesn't matter, I'm going to keep going. I need to finish this, even if you're getting off. And I think David was a little bit more like, oh, if you got off, like I might get off too, type of thing.
Oh, really? Now you're the one who had the initial dream, but you would have got off if Jana wasn't enjoying it?
Yeah, it was still, it's honestly still even a tough question to answer now. It would have been very situational, and like, depending on why she was getting off and where, would have definitely swayed my vote. I think knowing now the friends that I met along the way, and like the fact that we were with such a large bubble, I think it very much would have been like, okay, I'll see you in a few months. But
yeah, that would have gone down well.
I think I would have supported it because I would have definitely wanted to do the same if he hurt himself. I remember he was having some knee pain in the White Mountains, and I was like, oh no, you can't hurt yourself because we need to keep going.
Yeah.
I'm so committed to this now.
I think you'll agree, though, it's quite an important conversation to have because, it does come up quite often with people. So it's one of those things that people really need to think about if they're going with somebody else. And so you progressed and you'd had the conversation, you knew you were possibly going to carry on. Did that change as time was going on then? As you got, say, down to Virginia, you're thinking, well, I'm not getting off now, whatever she does or whatever he does. Do you think you got your mindset right and that by a certain point you crossed that line, you've crossed the Rubicon, you weren't going back? Is that right?
For me, definitely. Although I think maybe it was like 3 days in that I was like, yeah, you
right.
hurt yourself. I'm going to keep going. I don't know about David.
For me, as we got closer to the end, it became more of a debate as to whether I finish it on my own or whether I then wait and like finish whatever section that we still had left together and do it as a group the entire way, then as a section hike rather than just a straight through hike. And so I never really came up with a solid answer for that. And so I'm glad I didn't have to make that decision.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would have chosen.
Yeah, I guess we did talk about the section hike a lot. Kind of like, I think once we hit halfway, we were like, if we had to get off now, we could probably do the rest in like a couple months next winter or something. Like we definitely started talking about a section hike if one of us got hurt around after the halfway point.
Wow. So you've already referred to this. You took Katahdin as your approach trail. What was that? So having said that you didn't overdo it and didn't work too hard, what was that like? Did you find it very tough? Because it's not an easy hike. That is not an easy climb, is it?
No, we had previously attempted Katahdin because we don't live far from Katahdin, being in Canada, and we had attempted it in a hurricane before, and we made it to the tree line, which we thought was probably about halfway, 3/4 of the way up the mountain was our estimate of how far we made it. And so when we did it for our thru hike and we got to the tree line, I was like, damn, we're cruising, and then like hours and hours and hours later, you reached the summit of Katahdin. You were in fact not halfway at all. So
nowhere near. Yeah, I was about to correct you on that. Yeah, you weren't.
yeah, which we learned pretty quick. But yeah, it was tough. I think that I have decent cardio, so I think for me it was more so like the fear of breaking an ankle on day one.
Sure. And you know what? That's about as good a place to break an ankle as you. If you've got a chance to break an ankle, that's not a bad place. Especially coming down it. Now, I don't know how did you go up the Hunt Trail and down the Hunt Trail? Oh, you did? So, yeah, coming down, I found that incredibly difficult, to be honest with you. More difficult than actually going up as it happens, because obviously I had 2,000 miles under my feet at the times I could get up there. And a lot of people need to get into a rhythm to hike this. And we've talked about it on the show quite a bit. Did it take you long to realise that it was something that you could and that you really wanted to do? You already said you learned pretty quickly, Jana, that you wanted to do it. But was it something you thought to yourself, yeah, I'm into this. I'm really going well. I've got my rhythm. Did you find that pretty quickly?
I think it ebbed and flowed a little bit, like day to day, maybe. Like there were definitely like several like days in a row or like sections where I was like, wow, I'm a thru hiker. This feels amazing. And then you're like maybe in the rocks of Pennsylvania and it's raining and something fell over in your tent overnight and the rhythm is destroyed. You're just getting through the day. But yeah, I think like maybe closer towards the very, very end, like the second half of Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, Georgia, I found that I'd like start walking in the morning and just like completely zone out into like a meditative state and not come out of it until I was like hungry and had a snack.
How sociable.
So I think I got very into the zone kind of towards the end.
And David, did you guys actually hike together? I know you're hiking as a couple, but did you actually hike together? In other words, were you a couple of yards apart from each other? Because whoever was in the lead was setting the pace there. So how did that work out?
Yeah, so we actually had a deal going into the trail. I am terrified of spiders. Jana's terrified of snakes. So Jana was like, I'll hike for the first section of the trail until we got to, we thought, New Jersey. We were expecting Pennsylvania. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, I'll take it from there when we get into snake territory. The downside of that was I was very much not as physically prepared for the trail as Jana was. I hadn't been as hiking for as long or running for as long. So at the beginning of the trail, she was definitely outpacing me. And we kind of then had a deal where it's like, okay, like I'll just meet you at the top of the next mountain.
Sure,
and we'll like get to the summit. I'll catch my breath and then we'll kind of keep going. And so it kind of changed anywhere from she was 10 feet in front of me to theoretically 30 minutes in front of me, depending on how slow I was going up a mountain.
I'm pleased to hear that, because as I used to hate it when I see 4 or 5 people walking in a line, because the 4 behind the one in the lead, they were all hiking his hike or her hike, and it's very important to get your own pace and walk how you want to walk as well. And you told me before when we spoke that you did quite a lot of swimming, and I know a number of people do this. I actually didn't, I only went in once or twice, I think. Was that mainly in the northern states where it's gorgeous to swim, or did you keep it going throughout when you went further south?
We definitely did it in Maine and Vermont. I think Maine and Vermont were our 2 states that we really did it in. It was a nice and warm summer at that point.
Yeah.
And then once we got south, we got hit by a really cold snap that never seemed to go away. And so at that point, we definitely did not want to get into the water.
Yeah, that's going to put you off.
But near the start of the trail and when we were doing less miles to try and just ease our bodies into it, we'd get to camp anywhere between noon and 3 p.m. and kind of just be like, well, there's a really nice lake here. We might as well just go jump in, and kind of just did that as we saw time and everything.
Yeah, nice. I love the idea of swimming in a lake, especially on a hot day. But really, I just can't be asked to cleaning myself up after and dry myself off. And by going south, the main viewing highlights are in the north, aren't they? I mean, there's spectacular views and so on. Did you continue to love it as you went along? Because I have found that from a number of southbounders, they've done the tough bit in the first couple of states. And does it become easier, or are you just excited by the whole of the trail?
Excited by the whole of the trail for sure. I was a little worried that we were gonna experience the highlights at the beginning and then not enjoy the rest. I had friends be like, aren't you going to be bored? And David and I talked about this probably every single day on the trail. Like, wow, I'm not bored at all, because something different happens every day. Like there's a different view. There's, a sub to look forward to, or someone in the tramley does something silly. Like truly every day there was something interesting or exciting. And like, I'm not exaggerating. Like, I don't think there was a single day that was, the same, or where I was bored or like not excited about the views.
And you know what? I'm glad you said that, because I never felt bored on the trail. I've heard a lot of people say, and I've read a lot of people say, it gets boring. It melds into each other. But I think that's partly because they don't record their thoughts at the time. I think if you look at, I'm going to ask you about the journals you did later, but if you write down just a little bit of stuff, you'll remember stuff about what you've written, and it will really sort of flesh out the whole thing for you. And what was the most challenging part of your hike? Did you find those early days challenging, or were there other things that you encountered that you thought to yourself, oh my gosh, that was tough?
I think for me, like when you say the word challenging part of your hike, the first few days of the 100-mile wilderness jump out in my brain, and southern Pennsylvania jumps out in my brain. And I think 100-mile wilderness my pack was way too heavy. And like I don't think eating or drinking quite right yet. Like I hadn't figured out my body and didn't have the electrolytes going. So I was just like on a roller coaster of mood swings all the time.
Yeah, David was shaking his head there, by the way.
Be careful.
Yeah, quite. Actually, he was shaking.
I didn't say anything.
I know you did. You were shaking it quite subtly, though. I noticed.
He's scared. Yeah, and then Southern PA, I think, like we got hit by a little bit of a rainstorm at the end of Southern PA. It was rocky. I'm terrified of rattlesnakes. Randomly, I switched to like a low drop shoe and felt like I couldn't walk properly anymore.
Dear.
I feel like I had a laundry list of things that were driving me crazy. And I know that was like the only time where I don't think I considered quitting, but I was like, this sucks.
So how do you push through those moments? Because, and funnily enough, I wasn't going to ask the question. I'll tell you why. I'll read the question was what it was going to be. The question was going to be, did either of you face any doubts or setbacks during the hike? And how did you push through these moments of uncertainty? Actually, I'm going to ask that and I'll tell you about where that question came from in a minute. So how did you push through then? If you were really struggling with it, how did you push through?
I think for me, kind of like our big Sobo bubble tramley came at the perfect time. David and I hiked with Shaggy and Homework a lot at the beginning of the trail. And then towards the end of the trail, we were with like Stretch and Lotus and No Kidding, just kind of like a smaller bubbles. And then in the middle, we were with this 20-person group.
Yes.
And I don't think I would ever consider quitting during that time because I loved everyone in the group so much and I wanted to see them and I didn't want the like guilt and shame of, quitting when we were with the group. So I think that they like kept me going during kind of like that hard
That's
time.
a good thing. That's a real good thing. And by the way, I've got to tell you what, this is the first time I've ever done this, by the way. I asked ChatGPT for a question about a hike of the Appalachian Trail and they came up with that. Isn't that cool?
Are you trying to get sponsored?
No, not at all.
Someone give him a sponsorship.
I think it's pretty cool. And actually, I found out in the past, I'm glad you just said that about being with the Tramley, how much you enjoy being with the Tramley, because I found out in the past, and you may have seen this yourself, that some couples can be a little bit insular within their own bubble because they're a couple and perhaps others don't, aren't let in. You obviously embrace the people around you. And you've already kind of said they kind of helped you push on. They obviously enhance your hike. What do you think it is about the trail that makes these relationships so really intense and very, very familiar straight away, doesn't it? David, you tell us, David. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, David, you should talk about your and Homework's romance. This is the perfect answer.
A bromance. Oh, go for it.
Romance,
go for it.
Yes. Oh, my goodness.
I think it's just the trail brings similar people together. You do have to kind of be slightly crazy to want to do something like this. It's kind of it's a big undertaking. And so I think everyone just generally has that natural sort of reason that they're on the trail and sense of adventure. And so that immediately gives you a really easy branch to start talking with someone because they're experiencing the same big life event that you are.
Sure.
And as soon as you kind of have that small bridge, we would then just find ourselves chatting. And once you get into a groove, you're hiking for a few hours straight, and all of a sudden you have talked for a few hours straight and basically given your whole life story, dumped all of your like secrets and like, this is how I'm feeling and all of this. And it's just, when you're just hiking, it's such an easy thing to just talk and learn about each other and really get to know each other on more than just a, hey, we're out for coffee or, hey, we ran into each other at the grocery store. It's just the environment and the atmosphere really caters towards getting to know people. And
I totally get it.
One day.
I totally
and then when you just do that every day.
Yeah. And you had this particular friendship with this guy, Homework, you say? Yeah. And you know what? I can understand that. Yeah, I know. I feel the same way about the number of people I hike with as well. It's a great part of the trail as far as I'm concerned anyway. Actually, I'm going to watch another ChatGPT one. I had so much fun with this the other day. What was the most significant lesson you learned from your experience, and how has it impacted your life since you completed the hike, if it has at all? That's a good question.
That's a really good question.
In other words, what did you learn about yourself? And are you sort of taking whatever it was you learned back into your life?
No, yeah, I definitely have one lesson. It's take it easy on yourself. We started out the trail going 8 to 10 miles a day,
Sure.
all day, every day. And so we would get into camp at 2 p.m. feeling really energized and like wanting to continue going, but we kind of held ourselves back. And I think we didn't really see anything come of that until near the end of the trail, when we were still being consistent. We were waking up in the mornings, still excited to be on the trail, still exciting to be pushing miles and all of that. And it just, watching the progression of just starting out easy and really making sure that you were kind to yourself and
Absolutely.
built yourself up to being ready to do miles and go on the trail, that really helped. We ended the trail never having done a marathon day of hiking more than 26.2 miles in a day. Our highest, I think, was 25 miles, and we did it like once or twice.
That is more than enough, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But it was just kind of one of those things where we took it easy on ourselves and we really were kind on our bodies, and that consistency really helped us to finish the trail in high spirits and safely, physically.
That's cool.
So I definitely think, just take it easy on yourself and really ease yourself into it.
And you said you've got a bit moody from time to time, Jana. How about the relationship? Was it tested, or I presume it must have been strengthened quite a bit because you go through so much together, and it had only just started, the relationship, because that you really put it through a test actually doing this, didn't you, together?
Yeah, I think.
Would you think that was a, I mean, it's a tough thing. It's a bit of a, what they call it, a baptism of fire, isn't it, to go through? So how did you come out of it?
I think, David and I were talking about this the other day, and we were talking about how during the day, like, I know for sure I was hangry, maybe at least 50% of the time. And so he steps too close to me and I'm like, get away, like, you're too close, you're going to step on my heels, I'm going to fall, be careful, and snapping at him all the time. But we said, every night we'd have supper, you'd get those good carbs in your body. And I don't think we ever fought after dinner, not once. So I think really a lot of it was just like lack of food. Your emotions are so heightened because what you're doing is so extreme.
Sure.
But I was looking through my journal the other day, and I used a little emoji at the top of every journal to indicate how I was feeling at the end of the day. And of the 154 days we were on trail, like, there's like 4 sad faces that aren't happy faces. And I think it's because I was journaling after I had supper every day.
That is cool. Yeah. So the result of that is do not journal halfway through the day.
I think my entries would have been a little different, honestly.
Now, I'm always going to remember my Katahdin day. How is your Springer day? It isn't the epic looking finish, but for you, it was the end of 2,200 miles. So what was that day like for you, and where did it start, and how did you feel when you got there?
It was kind of a weird end of the trail for us. We had kind of predetermined a date that we wanted to finish the trail. Gravy's sister was meeting us in Atlanta, and so we wanted to kind of finish around when her flight landed.
Right.
And then we noticed that we could finish in exactly 5 months by finishing on November 12th after starting on June 12th. And so in the end, our last week-ish ended up actually being us dialing back our mileage, like, a lot. And kind of taking those last few days really slowly, which was in a way like a return to how we started the trail, which was really nice. But our second last day on trail, we hiked 5 miles because there was a hurricane, and we spent the entire day in the shelter with our buddy No Kitten. And, around 3 p.m., the 3 of us picked up our stuff and hiked the 5 miles to one of the last shelters on the trail. I can't remember the name. And we camped out there for the night. And it was just, we weren't talking a lot, which was weird for us. And no kidding, we always had a little bit of a banter going. And It was like very quiet, as if everyone was kind of going through their own set of emotions in their head and didn't even know how to articulate it out loud yet. And it was kind of the same thing the next morning. Like, everyone was sort of packing up, and it was just like silent. And we got up before the sunrise and hike to kind of the summit for sunrise. And so it was dark. We had our headlamps on. We were kind of hopping over a couple little streams. I had a playlist going of all the favorite songs of our tramley. And so I was just like crying and emotional. And it was definitely like epic, but in like a quiet, meditative way, which I think just like sums up how we were at that point in the trail.
Did you feel the same, Nate?
Yeah, definitely. She kind of summed up those last few days and the last few hours really well, and kind of Springer is definitely a different view from Katahdin, but showing up there, and it was right before sunrise, so we got to just experience the entire sunrise on the summit, which
must be cool.
Yeah. It was, like there was a few really good kind of V's in the tree that you could really see through, and and so it was just an amazing morning. And then it was really weird because we then had to do the approach trail because our ride was getting at us Amicalola Falls, and so you then have almost 9 miles of hiking to do once That's you're done. Way. And so so we had spent a few hours at the summit, like 2.5 hours at the summit, I think. And then we were like, okay, I guess we're still hiking. And all of a sudden you're then at Amicalola Falls Park, and you're with all of these people, and you're going through the emotions of just finishing hiking 2,200 miles, and they're all out for the day, and you're just saying hi, and they're waving back with their kids. And so it was a really, really weird reintroduction. Kind of
it is.
To get off trail.
And it very much can be an odd finish for a lot of people, and not everybody has that emotion that you think that you would have thought you would have. But I'm glad you had some. And I know that you already mentioned earlier on you kept a blog on the trek, Jana, and David, you also journaled. Have you each read the other's thoughts? And were either of you, by the way, this is not ChatGPT, and were either of you surprised at what the other one wrote?
No, but that's a great idea.
Oh, you haven't read each other's? Yeah, wow.
I definitely, I read Jana's blogs on the trek as she was posting them, and I would help spitball some ideas and some statements while we were hiking. And so I knew what the posts were about and kind of the content.
Sure.
But no, we never actually looked at each other's journals specifically.
That's a great idea, though.
I think that'd be interesting.
I love that.
Because your perception of your hike may not be your partner's perception of your hike. So I wonder, it might be quite worth doing. And of course, now I suppose you did this straight out of college. I suppose you immediately launched yourselves into the workforce. How did you handle it, or did you have somewhere already lined up to go to, the two of you? Because I know you're not together at the moment in terms of location, are you?
No. So we got back kind of at an odd time. It was right before the holidays. And neither of us had anything kind of lined up. So jumping into kind of a job hunt around the holidays was hard. And it was weird because I wanted to give myself kind of time off, but I was also like, it takes a while to get a job. So we kind of both took the rest of 2022 off and just tried to enjoy the holidays and, reintroduce ourselves to society, because it was, in my opinion, fairly overwhelming, and then kind of started job hunting in the new year. And so we're separate right now. I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and just started a job here, and it's been overwhelming, honestly, to kind of go back to that. Time matters. You need to be on time. Things take a certain amount of time. You have to set an alarm in the morning to make sure you get to work at the right time. For me, driving has just been the most overwhelming thing ever. Like, David knows every day after I drive home that I need like a full hour before I can talk to anyone or say anything.
Before she can write a journal.
Before I can write my journal. An hour plus supper, and then I'm good.
And do you think the two of you will hike again?
Oh, yeah.
In terms of long distance hiking?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah. Absolutely. When we were on the trail, we weren't sure, but since we've been off, we talk about it.
Oh, cool. Well, look, you got a great story to tell, and I really appreciate you coming on the show to share it with me. I highly recommend you read each other's blog and work out what the other one was thinking at the same time you were thinking something else. But thanks for coming on the show and sharing your story with us.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
My pleasure. Cheers then. Bye. That was certainly a test, wasn't it? Getting together, then spending 5 months smelly and homeless in the woods. Awesome. And I know I often tease people about finishing on Springer, but it really must be just as wonderful for them when, after months of blood, sweat and tears, they cross that parking lot and do that short climb to the top. Let's face it, it's the end of their journey, and that is always special. And those couple of Chat GPT questions, I was just experimenting with it a couple of months ago, and those were quite interesting. Believe me, most of them weren't, but I thought I'd try those out. And just in case you're wondering, I haven't used any more since. Now, the class of 23, and we'll start with our Aussie from Boston, Steve Nota, or Dingo. Here's Steve. Now, we're back on with Steve Nota. Hey, Steve, how are you?
I'm well, thanks, Dingo. Steve, how are you? I'm Dingo.
Yeah, you called me Dingo. Well, that was going to be my first question. I'd forgotten to ask you, are you Dingo? Because you were talking about changing it.
No, I kept on as Dingo for sure. That's what I started with, and it seems to roll off the tongue pretty easily, so I'll do that.
Right, Dingo it is. Okay, and people call you that. Good.
Yeah.
I've got a few little notes from you, so we're going to go through those bit by bit. You said that the Smokies were great. That's not been the experience of everybody. So was it cold or was it exciting? What was it about the Smokies you really enjoyed?
Look, day one was horrible. I'll admit that. So the walk up from Fontana to the first shelter was in cold and rain, and we all arrived into that first shelter close to hypothermic, really.
Wow.
And probably close to 18 of us were crammed into the place. Somebody got the fire going at in the fireplace in there. So we were all able to dry out and warm up, and and then after that, it became gloriously sunny for the rest of that that trip. So it was beautiful, top of Klingman's Dome. It was beautiful views. The day after the rain, as you're walking through the Smokies, I mean, it was textbook, picture book photos you were getting, because you had the remnants of the front that had come through. So there were just puffy white clouds all around, the mountains.
Nice.
Going over Rocky Top was beautiful.
Talking about Klingman's Dome,
Yep.
I think it looks like a blot on the landscape. What do you think about it?
Well, look, I agree with you there. The views from on top of there are great. But absolutely. I mean, that whole lookout area, I mean, it doesn't look like it's clearly not natural, right? So, but I get it.
Carved over years and years and years.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, the reward is, walking up there with the throngs of others, and with all the people that drove up there. But you really do get some great views. And I was fortunate. There was a lovely couple out there giving out some bananas and things like that as trail magic.
Nice.
And that was the first day that I went over 15 miles as well, because after Klingman's, I went down the hill to that first shelter so I could have a quick blat into Gatlinburg for a resupply. So it worked out perfectly that day.
Right. So you went into Gatlinburg, and did you stayed? What do you think of that town? Because I tell you why I'm asking that is because I remember thinking, certainly when I saw Klingman's Dome itself, I felt like a fish out of water there. There were all these people just staring at us. What are these smelly hobos doing coming out of the woods? It was kind of weird. They must have seen thousands of thru hikers, and yet at the same time, you always feel like they're looking at you.
Well,
and then going to Gatlinburg, where it's really busy there as well.
That's right. Look, I was very fortunate. The NOC has a deal going with a beautiful hotel just across the street from them.
Nice.
So if you get a referral through the NOC, you get $180 room for $60.
Wow, nice.
And it was gorgeous. I was able to wash my clothes. I was able to repair my backpack. The belt buckle, one of the tangs of the belt buckle had broken on me right before I started my walk up out of Fontana. So
Right.
it did hold, but who knew how long it was going to hold for?
Yeah,
But, the folks at the NOC, they had a hiker box, full of spare clips and stuff, and yeah, they helped me write out, gratis to fix that up. So that was
cool.
nice, and I also had a nice feed, wash my clothes, all the rest, all those things that we love to do.
Yeah, and and I see that you went to one of my favourite hostels. You went to Elmer's. How is the old boy?
Look, at Elmer is he's slowing down. There's no other way to say it. He's the most gracious,
Yes.
gentleman that honestly, one of the most gracious gentlemen that I've met in my life. But he's not cooking anymore.
Shame.
And he's taking a lot fewer guests. He's a bit more selective on how many folks he wants to take in.
And he took in an Aussie?
Pardon me now?
He took in an Aussie?
Yeah. Can you believe that? I know.
Yeah, what's that all about?
Well, I must have, who knows? But it was a moment of weakness for him, I suppose. But when I was there were probably four of us, and again, I had a nice chat with him, and he really is. He's an icon. There's no other way to say it. And
he's
it
lovely
was
to talk to.
Spot too.
Yeah, it really is a great spot as well. I loved it. I loved it there. And then something I didn't know you had, because I've been I think I've been following some of your Facebook posts as well. You got Noro in Irwin. Talk me through that.
Well,
when did you notice?
How did I notice? Look, I was feeling, a bit off as on the hike from Hot Springs to Irwin.
Sure, great hike.
And then the night that I got into Irwin, got the shuttle into town, got some food as you do. I ate from the salad bar, and perhaps it was bad food from the salad bar. I don't know. But about an hour after I had that salad, I just felt awful. Went to bed, woke up the next day, kind of okay. And I started doing a slack pack back to back into town.
Sure.
And then the explosion started for about every 10 minutes. You had the urge to go, and of course, you carry a little bit of TP with you, right, for a slack pack, and of course, about midway through the hike, the 15-mile hike is like, yep, I'm out of TP now. So you're resorting to leaves and everything else. It was not fun.
Charming.
Too much.
So how long? No, not at all. So how long did that last then, Steve?
3 days, all up.
Wow.
So the day that I hiked, I was hoping to do a slack pack going north out of there, but it's like, I'm not doing that. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And then Tuesday morning, woke up feeling great and started walking.
Great. And I know you then went, you said it was really cold and rainy from Roan Mountain to Damascus. So you went across the boards, Jane Board and stuff. Well, what was that like in the rain? If there's high winds as well, what was it like?
Oh, it was miserable. Another way to say it. I mean, it was about, the mid 30s in the morning. So maybe it got up to like, we'll say the mid 40s, with 50-knot winds and rain. And so you were just chilled to the bone. And if it wasn't raining, then the other days it was just cold, cloudy, and windy. So, I was wearing everything I had on top to stay warm. So I'm wearing my gloves, I'm wearing my puffy, I'm wearing my shirt, I'm wearing a long sleeve T-shirt underneath it. And sometimes, as you're going through the balls and stuff, as you're on the top of the ridges, it's like, holy crap, the wind's still blowing right through. And, you just kept on walking just to stay warm, right?
Yeah. And this is your second year of doing this. How different is it this year, or did you feel you just kind of fitted straight into it straight away?
Look, I felt like, honestly, I did get into it pretty much straight away. I got into rhythm a lot quicker than I thought I would, Steve. which has been a good thing. And to be honest, I started racking up longer distances a lot quicker than I thought I would as well.
Good.
So, I was being as sensible as I could, doing about 10 or 12 miles for the first 2 or 3 weeks.
Sure.
But then, once I passed Klingman's and I did that 16-mile day, heck, after Gatlinburg, we were knocking out 16, 17-mile days all the way through Smokies and since then.
Very nice.
And
Very
I
nice.
was, so for instance, when we left Tennessee down by Lake Watauga there at
Hampton.
in that, they call it the Pennsylvania, or rather the Tennessee Turnpike for a reason, because you're just walking along a ridge and, you're knocking out 16 miles, you're done by 3 o'clock, and it's it's stupid to stop now, so let's go for another few hours, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're now staying with a friend of a friend just outside of Damascus.
Correct.
And you said farm fresh eggs, dog fix.
Yeah, dog fix.
Nice and comfortable. So are you saying you're staying tomorrow for that as well?
No. So today's my 0. Yesterday I got in at about midday.
Nice.
So bought myself, I needed a new pair of shoes. So I went from boots. Everyone's wearing trail runners, so I've become part of the converted.
There you go. Go for it. Okay, man. Well, look, good to catch up with you. Nice to know you're still enjoying it, and I know you're having your dog fix today. That's good. And you got Noro out the way. With a bit of luck, you won't get that again. So we'll catch up again in a couple of weeks. Okay.
Look forward to it, Steve.
Cheers, man. Take it easy. Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Cheers. Bye. Blimey, he got Noro in Irwin. That's not the first time I've heard that, to be fair. And of course, in typical Aussie straightforwardness, he shared. Lovely. And staying at Elmer's is such a treat. He may not be putting on his feasts anymore, but he's a feast of knowledge himself. So if you're going to be stopping in Hot Springs, look him up and try to stay there. You will not regret it. Just before we hear from Joanne Flagg, I wanted to let you all know that the episode in 2 weeks' time, on Thursday, May the 25th, is going to have to be pre-recorded and posted before I head to Trail Days next week. So we'll have a main guest interview and I'll read the appropriate next section of Then the Hail Came. But it won't have a middle section unless one of you lovely listeners comes up with an idea for me. I need around, 15, maybe 20-minute segment. So if you can think of something we can do, just email me at steve@hikingradionetwork.com and I'll get onto it. Now, let's catch up with our only flip-flopper this year. Here's Joanne Flagg, and we're speaking to her from Delaware Water Gap, so you know she's done with Pennsylvania. Here's Joanne or Garmin. Oh, by the way, I had to fiddle about with my own sound on this in the next interview. I messed up a setting, and I didn't realise it until I was editing it this morning. It's all going to be okay going forward next week and so on, but you may notice I'm a little quieter than normal. Some of you maybe even prefer it that way. Here's Joanne.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Joanne, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Where actually are you now? You've just, by the way, everybody should know Joanne just sent me a text to say she can speak now. So you're either on the top of a mountain or you've suddenly found some decent signal somewhere.
Yes, I'm on Raccoon Ridge, just up into New Jersey in the Delaware Water Gap.
Oh, right.
Recreation area.
Right.
Yep.
So you've passed Pennsylvania. We'll talk about that in a second. But the note you sent me was that you've got a trail name. Tell me about that.
Oh, so my trail name is Garmin, as in don't forget it and have to go back over a half a mile in the driving rain to get it.
Oh, God. So what actually happened? So you put it down and left it in the shelter, or what'd you do?
Well, I had 3 things to charge, and my charging brick only had room for 2 with the cords that I had. So I thought, I wonder if I can go plug it into the tower of I was at Iron Master's Mansion Hostel. And so I went and I plugged it into the tower of their computer.
All right.
And when I went back to get it, I thought I left it right on the table by the TV, and then I couldn't find it. And then I was scouring through my pack, and everybody started helping me look for it. And I was like, oh, look, you guys, I thought I was pretty crafty plugging it into the tower to charge it. And
dear.
Rooster, one of the other hikers, said, I think you outcrafted yourself, Joanne, this time, but now you have a trail name. So
Oh, did you did find it, though, didn't you?
I did find it, yes.
Oh, right. Where was it?
It was plugged into the computer tower, like the towers that we used to have for the computers. You can plug a USB in and charge things.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said that. Yeah, but I thought when you got back you couldn't find it. So I'm totally confused now then.
Oh, well, it wasn't where I thought I left it.
Oh,
So
right.
I went looking for it and found it plugged into the computer.
All right. So now that's the Iron Masters, and as I remember, that's in Pine Furnace State Park. Is that right by the half-gallon challenge?
Yes. Yep.
And I know you're not halfway yet because you did a flip-flop. So did you try the challenge?
No, I did not. And the store there was not open yet, the one that traditionally does that.
All right. Well, you know what? It's not good. It's a good idea not to do that. I had a terrible experience.
Oh, no. I thought I would create my own half-gallon challenge when I get half the trail done.
Quite
See
right
what
so.
happens.
Yeah, that's quite right. So, yeah. So, how are you going? Is it going well for you? Are you feeling good? I mean, how's the physicality working out? You getting the miles in?
Yeah, it's hard every day. But my muscles are good. My feet, I wish I had shoes with more cushioning on them coming up through Pennsylvania. And I had thought that before I left home, but I just wanted to go with my trail runners. So the rocks in Pennsylvania, it's a lot of work for all your little parts of your feet and your ankles.
It really is, isn't it? You can't put your feet down anywhere at some stages. You know, you have to basically get stabbed in the foot each time you put your feet down, don't you?
Yes, and then your hips get tired because you're always balancing and aiming for a place to put your foot. Balance and aim. Balance and aim.
Exactly. So, have you fallen? Because those rocks are pretty precarious, aren't they? You know, some stage you're rock hopping for 100 yards or so, aren't you?
Oh, yes. Yeah, and longer. I did fall once way back, and then I fell once the other day because I was trying to hurry to see Fresh Ground with his Leapfrog Cafe.
Oh, right. I can understand that. Yeah.
I would have cried if I missed him, so I didn't want to miss him.
Now, I've never met him. I've actually tried to interview him before, but we didn't have a signal, and I must get back to him. I keep reminding myself to do that. So tell me about, firstly, how did you hear about Fresh Ground? Is it something that people even note in the shelters or what?
Well, you mean that particular day?
Well, yeah, generally, you know, how do you hear that he's around?
Oh, from watching YouTube, I know of him and that he's famous for going up and down and has the charity now. But one of my friends that I've been hiking with has texted me. I just happened to turn on my phone to send some pictures, which I never sent because I heard about Fresh Ground. And she's like, Fresh Ground at Smith Gap Road this afternoon. Right. And then just as I was putting my phone away, another thru-hiker up from the Georgia area who goes really fast, she comes by me, Fresh Ground is going to be at Smith Gap Road. I got to go. And so everybody tells everybody up the trail, and it just creates this whole excitement oh my gosh, we got to get there. So it was pretty funny.
And are you finding the community as you would imagine it would be, or has it been a surprise to you?
I thought I would just come out here and hike. I'm like, I just want to enjoy nature. But it's amazing how quickly you become part of the we-ness of the trail. You know, everybody's out here doing the same thing. They're doing it because they want to. And everybody's working hard. So everybody's got stories to share about the ups and downs and foibles of it. So that has been surprising and very heartwarming for me. So it's been a lot of fun.
If you've shared that with fellow hikers, what are your ups and downs and foibles so far then?
The ups are just, I love when the trail is fun to walk on. And, you know, I like going over water and trying to get over that. And I love the big rocks coming up out of Lehigh Gap where you got to go across the side of the top of the mountain. And
How is
I
that?
just love those things.
What sort of weather was it like when you went up Lehigh? Because just explain it to people what it looks like when you start.
I had a nice day. I don't know if I would do it personally in the rain.
I'd hate to go southbound, wouldn't you? I'd hate to go southbound in the rain on that one.
Yes. So you just get to this rock face, and it's like big pieces of rock that have come off and like fallen like bricks, and some places it's just granite or whatever the rock is that's part of the mountainside, and there are white blazes that show you where to go up the rock, and sometimes you've got a 6-foot high rock and you find the little toe holds, the little tiny ledges on the side of the rock, and you climb up over it. And I always, like, some people can do it with their poles. The girl I was with did it with her pole. She's standing up straight, and here I am on all fours. I said, I hope I don't have to go all the way up Katahdin on all fours.
I think I identify more with you, actually. Yeah. And funny enough, when you see those white blazes, you think, really? We're going up there? It's kind of weird, some of the positions. And from my memory, and I know it's changed a lot, I know they've done some relocations over the years. In fact, I know they'd relocated when I went second time. At the top, there's a beautiful path, isn't there? Quite flat, nice and easy, with lovely views out to the left. Is that still there?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Lovely. Nice.
That's one thing that I learned about down here that we don't have at home is these long ridges.
Yes.
15-mile long ridges. Up home in Massachusetts, we have hills and mountains
Absolutely.
that go up and down, not these long rock ridges.
So you're in Delaware Water Gap. You must have breathed a slight sigh of relief when you left Pennsylvania. But as a lot of people then discover, the rocks don't suddenly stop. They carry on. They carry on.
Yeah, I've run into some today. But Pennsylvania was hard. I cried when I crossed over the line into New Jersey.
It's quite emotional, isn't it? Don't you think so? Are you finding emotions heightened on this trip? Because I know a lot of people do.
Yeah. It's like I just feel really happy sometimes, and I just really like being out here and coming down into Delaware Water Gap yesterday. There were a lot of day hikers, and they see your pack and they're like, "Oh, are you through hiking the AT?"
Yes.
And they're just so interested and curious and ask questions. And it's fun to feel like an ambassador for the AT and the hikers who do it, and really feel happy and that I'm really enjoying it.
Absolutely.
To share that with them.
Absolutely. So, and is your gear holding up? Is that working out for you?
So far, I'm good.
Right. Okay.
Very good.
Good. Well, look, I'm glad you're doing well. I'm glad you're keeping going. I'm glad. Also, most glad for you that you've done Pennsylvania, which, trust me, you will look back and think, "Oh my God, thank God that's over."
Yes. Well, the whole time I'm thinking, you guys have done this twice, more than twice.
Yeah.
Big question mark about that.
Yeah, only a fool would do it twice. Yeah. All right, Joanne, we'll keep going and text me when you've got some things to share, and we'll get back on the show. Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve.
All right, Joanne. Cheers then. Bye.
Yep. Cheers. Bye-bye.
I love what she said there. She talked about becoming part of the we-ness. Joanne was originally out there to be in nature, for the hike and for a bit of solitude, but other people are so enticing on this trail. Unless you're a real old curmudgeon, like I can be sometimes, most people will embrace their fellow hikers and share some very intimate, special moments that they'll remember forever. So watch out for the we-ness. It'll creep up on you. And it was good to hear that Fresh Ground is still doing his thing out there. I must get back to him sometime and get him on the show. Just before we hear from our third-class member this week, wanted to let you all know that I've added several new shirts to the hrntradingpost.com website this week. I've at last found time to add some performance or hiking shirts that some of you may like. Check them out, because I'll be adding more in the near future. And remember, you can either go directly to that site at hrntradingpost.com or click on the store button on the hikingradionetwork.com website. Now, Dale Shotkoski learns that, even in May, the Smokies can be cold and snowy. Here's Dale. Well, we're back on with Dale Shotkoski, who we had technical problems with last time, but we appear to be through. So, and I'm speaking to him, and he's in Hot Springs right now. Hey, Dale, how are you?
I'm doing fine.
And well, first off, that's a good start, because not everybody's been doing fine recently. Are you having a good time?
Yeah, it's been fun. Came out here looking for an adventure, and it's been that, because it's been very challenging weather-wise, especially. And if you remember way back from the very beginning, I said one of my fears was my feet. And with the wet weather, I did get a few blisters. But who was it, Dr. Lynne, that you had on, gave some good blister prevention and blister care. Yes. And I've been exercising her advice. So Thank her for her advice again.
Right. So Dr. Lynne's lesson helped then. So what did you actually do to manage your feet then?
Well, when I developed, you could feel a blister, kind of a hot spot coming on. Mm-hmm. So basically when I could feel that, if it was dry enough, wherever I was, I could get the shoe and sock off and wrap it, treat it, whatever, to prevent it from more friction. Yeah. And if a blister did develop, she said how to basically wipe the area, get it clean. And I have, a little pin that I could poke and drain, and then put more ointment, and then rewrap and start off again. So
are they all hardening up now then?
You know what? That's why I'm taking a 0 day in Hot Springs, because we've had so many wet days and walking in mud for so long that I'm going to give my feet a break. They need 24 hours at least.
All right. And you sent me a few notes, which is very helpful for me, obviously. And you just say here that you obviously didn't have bad weather when you went up Mount Albert, which is a spectacular thing. It was a clear day. So talk to us about going up Albert.
It was a different type of climb. It was a little more challenging, but it was fun. It was a good day because the sun was shining. And so you just appreciated everything about the day, and the view was spectacular up there. So it's certainly worth the climb. Yeah. Certainly worth the climb.
And then, of course, you got into the Smokies, and you said you even had snow in May in the Smokies. Oh my gosh! So where was that? Because I've had snow both times in the second half of the Smokies. So when did you get yours?
We hiked from Fontana one day that was okay, but the temperatures were dropping all day. Right. We went into the shelter. I don't even remember which one, but we went into the shelter and we knew it because we knew it was going to rain. Mm-hmm. And the rain started, and everyone was hopeful it was going to let up. It didn't. It just rained all day. And so we were calling it the Great Smoky Mountain River instead of the trail, because the water just runs down the trail. Right. And then by evening, it got colder and colder. And one guy referred to it as grapple, because it's kind of like ice pellets. And I don't know if that's an exact word or not, but that's what somebody referred to it as, because it wasn't snowflakes, it was snow pellets. I mean, it's ice pellets that were coming down.
I seem to remember that coming off the trees from when I came out of the NOC in 2014 actually. It was like pieces of ice were dropping out of the trees, and it wasn't. You're right, it wasn't snow, and it's fascinating and beautiful to see as well, isn't it?
Yes, and then it did snow too. On top of that, because we were sitting in a shelter just watching the snow walk by, and so we all had to get pictures of the ice on the trail and the icicles hanging from everything. So we had some really cold days.
And you had some wet days. You said the trail was a river at times. So did you fall over many times? So far I'm up to 3. Oh. 3 spills. One was just a mudslide, it was just a slip and slide and just took me down. Another was ice coming down from Klingman's dome, not the dome itself, but the trail down. Yeah. You couldn't tell if it was wet or frozen. And one of the rocks wasn't wet, it was frozen. Oh. And another one was just a trekking pole got stuck in some rocks, and I just dropped to a knee rather than rip my shoulder out. So far, okay. So the weather got down to the 20s. Are you taking most of your stuff in your sleeping bag then?
I use a quilt with a liner and a sleeping pad, and I have the wool leggings, wool top, and I did wear my puffy jacket and another jacket and a stocking cap, and gloves at night, but it kept the filters and phones and that kind of stuff inside with you to keep them all from freezing so they would work, because one guy forgot to do that and his filter froze, and that's not a good thing.
As a bit of a pro tip, and hopefully I feel qualified to say this. When I got clothes wet, I would sometimes put my wet clothes on or damp clothes on at about 4:00 in the morning. And by the time, 6:00 came around, they were normally fairly dry because my body was warm inside the sleeping bag. I mean, I don't recommend it as a comfortable way to sleep, but certainly if you're awake, why not warm them up because your body really is warm.
Well, what I did is I would put like socks and some of that stuff under the sleeping pad, which isn't exactly warm, but it does help a little bit. And then when I wake up before I get out of my sleeping bag, I reach under and put them inside to warm them up. Because putting that stuff on cold it shocks the system.
It does, yeah. It certainly wakes you up. And I know you were more planning on staying in your tent. You stayed in the shelters with this weather and so on. How's that been? Because some people just can never sleep in shelters. I know, but I know others who just love it all the time. So, what was your shelter experience like?
It was okay. I mean, it's a different type of sleep because, as you've probably experienced, a lot of snoring, a lot of rustling, a lot of everything that goes on. So I don't feel like the sleep is as good. But when it's just pouring rain, I mean, it's a great option. It's a far better option than setting up. When once the tent's wet, you can try to wipe it out. You can try to hang it out. But we didn't really have much sun for several days to even hang stuff out. So shelters are fine. And in the Smokies, they encourage that. So it worked out. I actually did sleep. It was fine.
Right. And has anybody given you a trail name yet? Or are you still Dale?
I'm still hiking with the majority of people are younger than me, and very early on they started calling me Mr. Right. They started calling me Mr. Dale because I was older and I came from a professional background, so they were referring to me as Mr. Dale, and more people are just calling me that. So I don't know that it's a trail name yet, but a lot of people refer to me as Mr. Dale.
Well, you know what? So, that's kind of respectful. And how are you finding that?
It is respectful. It was out of respect too, so I appreciate it.
And how are you finding that relationship with young people you would rarely meet in real life? How's that worked out for you?
We're equals. Of course. They're amazed. I mean, they're faster than I am up. They're faster than I am down. But when we get to we meet up when they have water sources, lunch breaks, that kind of stuff. We're always like coming right back together again. Yes. And so it's just a lot of smiles and I would say very respectful group that I've been with. I've been with some really good people. So it makes it all worth it.
It absolutely does. Absolutely does. And I'm disbelieving that you could do a 20-mile day so early. So, especially at our because you're younger than me, but at our sort of more advanced years. When did you do your first 20-mile day, and where was it?
In the Smokies. The reason I did 20 is it was planned to maybe be, I don't remember, it was a shorter day than that, but we were climbing to a shelter and the ground was frozen. And that ice was still on the ground everywhere. And we looked and we saw the next shelter was down in elevation a little bit. So we just pushed on because we wanted to get down in elevation. We wanted to find some stuff. And at mile 18, my body was kind of like, you're tired. but I made it up and made it over and got to the next shelter and got me into hot springs a lot quicker that way. Yeah, we went through the Smokies in like 4.5 days because it was just cold. Yeah. It was just cold and windy. We missed a lot of views, I'm sure.
I mean, I'm sure you are. That's why I always say take the views when you can, because they may not be there even 10 minutes later. But what did you feel like the next day after doing a 20? Because, that's quite early to do a 20 for an older guy.
I had been building up. I'd started, I followed a lot of the advice and your advice too, stay that 8 to 10 for the first couple of weeks. And I was doing that and I was actually getting in so early, I was getting kind of bored at camps, because you're just there. And sure. So I started working up to 12s and then worked into 15s and 16s. And so, the last 4 or 5 days, it's been like 16, 15, 18, and 20. So, I mean, today was only an 8-mile day in. But, I mean, I've been between the 15 and 20s now, all through the Smokies, just to get out of there. Yeah. It's a beautiful place, but we didn't see it, We saw parts of it, though. I can't say it.
What is your camp routine then, Dale? Because you say you get there early and you're bored, but I never was really. It was a lovely time to relax and meet people and so on, and have your food and set up and have a read and perhaps even have a sleep. So what do you do when you get into camp normally?
Well, with the 8-mile days, I was getting in by noon. And so there wasn't anybody there, maybe me and a few other people, which was nice, because I was intentionally doing that.
Yeah.
But now at around the 15 miles and stuff, I'm getting in at 4, we leave it. It's I don't know what it is per mile because it depends on the terrain. Some terrain is so steep, the miles are a lot different than if they're flatter,
Sure.
But no, the camp routine is basically we meet up with a lot of the people that you've seen along the day, and you all visit, you all eat, you sit around and you talk about your day, you talk about where you're going and what's good to eat. And then everybody drifts off to their either tents or shelters and quiets down and people just fall asleep.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's fun.
One of our class members, Betty, she said that she can't go to sleep if she doesn't sleep very long. If she goes to sleep, at hike at midnight, it's at 7 or 8 o'clock. Are you able to go to bed and go to sleep at about 8 o'clock and then wake up about 5 or 6?
Like you said, quiet time really does kick in around 8 o'clock has been my experience here. And I drift off and it seems like I wake up in the middle of the night and my body's like, man, you're tired. There's aches and pains. But I'd look at the clock and it may be, 2:30. And so I'll fall back asleep. And then when I wake up at between the 5 and 6, when the birds start singing or winds die down or whatever, I feel better. It's just that extra little rest to allow the body to recover. I usually start the day okay. I just start the day feeling good.
That's great.
So
That's
my body's really been holding up except for a few blisters. And I'm treating, like I said, giving them 24 hours off. This will be my first full 0 because I've taken a few Neros into town, but This is the first full 0. And I'm going to let the feet just heal up a little bit so I don't stumble and hurt myself and don't want it to get worse.
Well, we're recording this on Friday, May the 5th. And Trail Days is in 2 weeks' time. Do you think you'll be to Damascus by then? I'm just trying to work out where you are. Yeah, you probably will be, won't you? Are you going to go to Trail Days?
I do not. People are talking about it because they're saying we're on the edge. We can make it if we keep going at the pace we're going. And to me, it wasn't a priority. Okay. My priority was just enjoy every day.
Sure.
One day and just enjoy it. And if I get there and it's Trail Days, fine. But I doubt I would shuttle up to it. Okay. I may or may not. We will see.
Okay.
Right now, it wasn't a priority.
Well, if you do, come say hi because I'll be there. All right.
Oh, you're going to be there?
I'm going to be there. Yeah. So I'll be there.
Oh, well, sure. Well, maybe I will push a little bit, make sure I get there.
No. I don't want to be responsible for you pushing and then getting injured. So you get there when you get there, okay? And I'm actually going to be going back. I'm actually going to be going back and hiking back towards Damascus from the south straight after Trail Days. So I may catch you on that one as well. So you never know.
That would be great. That'd be great.
Okay, man. Well, look, please for you. Sad the weather's been crappy, but just keep an eye on the forecast. You'll have some lovely days, and then at the height of summer, you'll be wishing for those cold days again. So keep on trekking.
You've said many times too that you really haven't hiked until you've had 3 days of rain, setting up, tearing down in the rain, and we got it now. Yes. So we've experienced it.
You've done that one. Okay, man. Well, good to talk to you. Catch up with you soon, okay?
Thank you so much.
Cheers, then.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye, Mr. Dale.
Bye.
I'm so pleased his feet benefited from Dr. Lynne's advice. How cool is that? But Dale's experience in the Smokies is a warning about sending your winter gear home too early. You can get very unpleasantly surprised there, so beware. And I kind of think that Mr. Dale is a rather endearing trail name. It's good to see that all 3 of this week's class members are still pushing on. Hopefully we'll get more finishers than we did last year. Before we listen to George Stefanos' Then the How Came, thanks as ever go to our donors. This week I want to thank monthly donors Brian Helton Jr., Lisa Rana, Woody Bess and Natisha Webb, while Mark Bino and Stephen Bartholomew also donated to our shows. Thanks to each of you from the bottom of my heart. Now, with home so close, George and some of his friends and family have a bit of a party with predictable results. I'll see you next week. Sunday the 14th of August 1983, mile 1468.5. This morning the trail passed through portions of the Housatonic State Forest, an attractive wooded highland plateau with no long-range views. A little more than 4 miles from last night's campsite, I came to a grove of beautiful old pine trees. In the middle of the grove, next to a small rushing stream, was a solitary picnic bench where I took my first break. The day was another cool, breezy and sunny one. 3 miles later, the Appalachian Trail crossed a paved road and entered Dean Ravine. It was the nicest of the series of ravines I had recently encountered. A pretty chain of small waterfalls and cascades in a deep, narrow valley filled with pine and hemlock. This was followed by a sick climb over some open ledges which were wooded and provided no real views, to a rocky stretch of trail reminiscent of Pennsylvania. The trail turned into a virtual rock climb straight up the face of a cliff to the top of Barrack Mountain. It was a rather sadistic climb for a backpacking trail, but some open ledges near the summit offered great views to the north and to the south, some of the nicest since Shenandoah National Park. Another excellent vista looking westward from a point just beyond the summit immediately preceded an almost vertical plunge down cliffs to US 7. All in all, Barrack Mountain was a grueling but rewarding section of trail. It was probably better suited to a day hiking trail than a backpacking footpath, but it was at least an interesting experience. There's soon going to be a major relocation of the Appalachian Trail in Connecticut. All the present trail east of the Housatonic River is about to be eliminated. This will also eliminate a great deal of road walking, but the AT will be poorer without Dark Entry Ravine, Cathedral Pines, and that high farming valley, Mohawk Mountain, and Dean Ravine. I think I'll even miss the presence of Barrack Mountain on the trail. I'm fortunate to have had the opportunity to hike the AT before all those jewels were relocated from the trail. In a way, this will not have any effect upon a surprisingly large minority of thru-hikers. It amazes me to hear about how many walk US 7 from Kent or Cornwall Bridge to Falls Village. Their loss. There's an interesting contrast at work here. I probably hit more bad trail during my recent trek through New Jersey than in any other state than the AT. So many stretches of footpath were brand new relocations off roads, and the trail work was sloppy and rushed along much of it. There could be a tendency, therefore, to say New Jersey sucks. However, all those recent trails were a result of recent land purchases by the state to provide a wooded route and eliminate long roadwalks. No doubt the local trail clubs were in a hurry to make use of the new route, and the trail construction was a rush job. I expect it will be much improved a few years from now, and the new route will be far superior to the old. In contrast, Connecticut has done nothing for the trail, and the answer to everything always seems to be to eliminate another nice stretch of trail rather than try to acquire land to protect the current route. Enough beauty still exists in the few protected areas to ensure that the short stretch of Appalachian Trail in Connecticut will remain pleasant in the coming years, but so much will be lost. I'm glad I made my thru-hike in time to see it. After that tough traverse of Barrack Mountain, the village diner was a welcome sight. It was directly on the Appalachian Trail at the crossing of US 7. As usual, I ordered from the Weight Watchers menu, a club sandwich, fries, several Cokes and a chocolate sundae. While I ate, I tried to call home for a half hour. The line was busy. I finally got through just before 2 o'clock and made arrangements with my brother Mike for him and some other friends and relatives to meet me at 7 o'clock at the junction of Connecticut 41 and Lower Cobble Road, along a road walk up ahead in the village of Salisbury, Connecticut. The spot was almost 9 miles up the trail, and I wanted to allow myself plenty of time to get there before they arrived. Mike asked me if we could schedule the meeting earlier, so I said 6 o'clock. He wanted to make it even earlier, so I told him I would do my best to be there by 5 o'clock. He said they would be there waiting for me. I am not and never will be a super fast hiker. Even while struggling to reach a shelter at the end of a long day, I am constantly distracted by views, possible photographs and attractive tableau. I probably must work harder to average 2.5 miles per hour over a given stretch of trail than most thru-hikers need to work in order to average 3 miles per hour. Yet here I was, promising to meet people 9 miles up the trail in less than 3 hours. I paid for my meal and started making tracks. Past the diner, there was a very brief footpath, followed by 3.5 miles of roadwalk. I soon left Pete, who had declined my invitation to join the festivities tonight and was therefore in no hurry, far behind. The Appalachian Trail crossed the Housatonic River. The final 1.5 miles of the roadwalk was a steady climb back out of the valley. The trail entered the forest and followed a stream up the lower slopes of Prospect Mountain. Despite a short, steep pitch on the climb up alongside Prospect Falls on rock steps and iron ladders, I continued without stopping. I kept walking, telling myself I would take a break in a little while and pretending to believe me. After another 1/2 mile, I dropped my backpack and carried my camera 500 feet down a side trail to Rand's View, a spot at the top of a high sloping pasture where a remarkable view northward revealed the Taconic Range from Lion's Head to Mount Everett. I'll be hiking that scenic section of the Appalachian Trail tomorrow. It was such a nice spot I had to sit down for a couple of minutes to take in the views and shoot a few photographs before continuing my dash to the rendezvous. The trail went past a large rock outcrop called the Giant's Thumb, which looked, coincidentally, almost exactly like a giant thumb. I hope that Crazy Charlie hiked this section of trail. That giant thumb would have been a wonderful inspiration to him, celebrating, as it does, his favourite means of AT travel. The trail had been relatively flat since the top of Prospect Falls, and I was still flying. A nice vista southward of rolling hill country and scenic wooded hollows from a place called Billy's View stopped me for about a minute. Near the beginning of the descent to Connecticut 44, a skunk stood in my path, showing no immediate inclination to move aside. I didn't feel like pressing the issue, so I sat down and took my second break. He moved on a couple of minutes later, and so did I. The descent was steep, but not sadistically so. I soon reached Connecticut 44 and began the final half-mile, all-road walk to the rendezvous. I managed to arrive before 5 o'clock. I sat down to await for my guests. A combination of factors postponed their arrival until 7 o'clock, which had been my original suggestion for the meeting time. The gang included my brother Mike, several of my cousins and several friends. I told them to drive up the road a quarter mile to the spot where the Appalachian Trail re-entered the woods, and I would meet them there in a few minutes. An official camping zone was another quarter mile along the trail up the mountain, and that was where we spent the night. My cousins had borrowed an incredible monstrosity of a tent, which required quite a struggle to set up. The directions were in Polish. When it was pitched, it slept all 8 of us, and could have handled about a dozen party crashers as well had any shown up. What followed was a grotesque nightmare. They had brought with them cases of beer, and they forced me to join in their drunken debaucheries all night. I kept begging them to let me sleep so I could awake early tomorrow and grind out mega mileage, but they held me down, twisted my arm, poured beer into my mouth, and forced me to swallow the vile brew. It was awful. Monday the 15th of August 1983, mile 1481.1. I fell asleep sometime around 2 in the morning. I woke at 7 o'clock and lay there for about an hour, wondering who I was and feeling guilty about not jumping up and preparing to make some mileage. I finally crawled out of my sleeping bag at 8 o'clock and set about getting my backpack in order. My most pressing chores were to clean my pans, in which we had cooked dinner last night, and to find the cap from my water bottle, which had wandered off somewhere during last night's revelries. I spent most of the time zoning out and scratching my butt. I wake up very slowly in the morning as a rule, but today, of course, was worse than usual. Somehow I managed to get all my gear assembled, cleaned and stashed back into my pack. I had a healthy breakfast of beer and Pop-Tarts. I tried dunking, but the combination didn't really work. It took us about an hour to collect all our garbage and return the area to its pristine condition. As a matter of fact, we left the place cleaner than we had found it. We may be decadent, but we do have consciences. At 11 o'clock, everybody said goodbye and headed down the trail to my cousin's van. Pete showed up at about that time. He had made a stop in Salisbury to pick up groceries. Together, we headed up the mountain. The ensuing stretch of trail, from Route 41 to Jug End, was the second of the 3 small segments of the Appalachian Trail on which I had already hiked prior to this trip. There was a new relocation up to Lion's Head, however, that I was seeing for the first time. It had no views and it seemed to be a lot steeper than the old trail. Soon I was sweating beer from every pore. It was another bright sunny day and quite a bit warmer and more humid than the past few days. I did not need that after last night's bacchanalia. Somehow I made it up the 2-mile climb to Lion's Head. The southern portion of the Taconic mountain chain is basically 2 parallel ranges separated by a high central valley. The Appalachian Trail follows the eastern range. In Connecticut, this range consists of a high, wooded plateau called Mount Riga, with the rocky crag of Lion's Head rising from its southernmost tip. This location provides the peak with spectacular views to the south and east across the Housatonic Valley of a rugged, hilly country of forests, lakes and small farms. These were easily the best views since Shenandoah, and I know from previous hikes that the views only improve as you head north. I took a long break on Lion's Head. Just past the summit was another great outlook, to the north this time, of the high plateau with Bear Mountain rising above its northern end. I took another lengthy break 2 miles later at Bond's Shelter, the newest and the only genuinely nice shelter in Connecticut. I read the register and gulped down about a half-gallon of water from the nearby Brassy Brook in order to combat a severe case of cottonmouth. After the shelter, the Appalachian Trail ascended Bear Mountain, the first 2,000-foot summit over which the trail passed since Shenandoah National Park. The climb was very rugged, but the trail ascended through low, scrubby pines, past naked rock ledges with constant views to the south, east and west. Nice views always make a difficult climb seem easier. The summit was crowned by the ruins of a stone monument built in 1885. The monument now consists of a large, disorderly pile of rocks, and the cement platform which used to sit on top now rests near the bottom. The panorama from atop the rock pile is still spectacular, with legitimate 360-degree views. To the north loom the massive hulks of Race Mountain and Mount Everett in Massachusetts. To the east lies the broad, flat Housatonic Valley, with the Berkshires of Massachusetts stretching out to the northwest horizon. To the south, one's gaze extends across the plateau to Lion's Head and the mountains and valleys below. To the west, across a high wooded valley, are the peaks of the western fork of the Taconics. I only paused for a moment at this summit before continuing down the other side. A screaming horde of kids from a nearby summer camp was swarming all over the rocks. I had already climbed Bear Mountain several times on earlier hikes. The Appalachian Trail descended steeply down the cliffs which constitute the northern face of Bear Mountain into a deep, narrow, densely wooded ravine. As I entered Sage's Ravine,